Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host, who during last year's Calgary Stampede made history when he became the first Englishman to ride to victory in the Rangeland Derby, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good. I think you may possibly know more about the Calgary Stampede than I do. And I've been there on about 4 or 5 occasions, I think I want to say.
One of them taking home the bacon or the maple smoked bacon in the Rangeland Derby, which is it's a sort of horse and cart horse race, and the winner can take over $2.5 million home. So
I just yeah, I'm just sitting on that, really.
Yeah, nest egg. How are you coping in this strange world we now live in, Luke?
I'm okay. I don't know. Everyone asks how I'm doing. I'm maybe joking / half jokingly replying with keeping it together.
Somebody I emailed the other day said, I think I'm doing all right. And I think that's quite a good response.
I think that's it, yeah.
It's all relative, isn't it? But
there's no marker of which to compare ourselves against, is there?
No. I'm definitely a person for whom, splitting myself off from society is without my choice, is definitely my preferred option. I mean, if I was forced to spend time with people I didn't know, that would be much, much worse for me.
So you're imagining kind of like the next kind of virus outbreak, but it's like the weird opposite, where like you can't be on your own.
Yes.
So you just have to. Everyone just fucking sleeps in. We all just move into hostels, basically, and we just sleep in like 48 berth rooms and stuff with other people.
Yeah, when that virus hits,
towels, that's going to be a nightmare.
That's going to be really difficult for me. That situation.
I'll be an extrovert's dream and an introvert's nightmare.
That's the one that will have me sort of shaking in the corner, definitely. Rocking back and forth. So I'm going to play the drop here because maybe I'm not going to play this.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Fucking trod on it. I'm going to just put that bit out and just play the drop again. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Yeah, there's actually a bit of news to discuss. None of it good, particularly, but there's a bit to get into.
Well, you're going to turn into John Krasinski then and give us some good news.
I've actually got if we've got time at the end of the show, we've got the cast of Hamilton just waiting on the line, but we'll we don't have too much of a good thing, so they'll come in later on. It'll be fine. So I think probably like in kind of, if you imagine the sort of drop in the pond and then the further away you get from Sheffield Wednesday, the ripples are, the closest bit of news to home was the fact that, obscure, distant striker Sammy Winnall actually has coronavirus. A test that he sort of took out of interest kind of thing, and finds out that he's got the virus. So we, obviously wish him the best and whoever he's isolating with. But it just shows how close to home this sort of illness is getting. How do you feel about the fact that sort of it seems to be something that's readily available to football players, but maybe not the general public?
The general public and the people,
or even health workers.
Frontline health workers, the people who are risking. I've heard about people, doctors and nurses in the States basically making end of life and funeral plans before they, amidst between their 12, 14-hour shifts that they're pulling, and all of the work and effort that goes into that. It's not, well, I mean, again, you're automatically kind of focusing on the fact that I'm sure this has been the same for many of the mucho celebs who have come down with this, I'm also curious to a lesser degree about Boris Johnson and whether he's having any kind of private healthcare, or not, without looking into that too much? I'm sure there's a lot of commentary.
It does seem that he's getting NHS treatment by and large. I believe he's gone to a very nice hospital, but
sure, I'm sure he has.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that's a lot of this is verging on very disrespectful. Which is probably very apt for me kind of talking and coming out with some of these things on the podcast. But I mean, I'm kind of conflicted. Part of me thinks that, I'm not particularly happy that the wealthy can afford to kind of spend money to figure this out. And another a very, very small part of me, this big part of Luke's COVID-19 thought pie chart this one is I'm happy for him that he managed to, I don't know, maybe limited, and then limited some of his future actions that kind of contains and stops the spread. Another thought part of this is going against that kind of, he has the wealth and the opportunities to do such things that, realistically, shouldn't everybody be tested?
Well, that's it. It's not Sam Winnall's fault that he is in a position where he can have a test.
Not at all.
It's just an abhorrent failure of all of the bits of society that mean that folks who desperately need them can't have them. And as you say, the best solution to all this is actually if everybody was able to get tested, that would be the best way to sort of handle it all. But that is so far distant from our current situation that it's not even worth talking about at this point in time. So a player falling ill to the coronavirus, I think quite nicely leads us on to the sort of second bit of news, which is this proposal by the EFL to complete the season in the space of sort of 56 days with behind closed door games.
I thought the segue you were going to use was let's talk about the other virus, and that is the EFL.
Either way, we can go either direction.
Okay, but yes, please tell me more about this. Just remind me of the EFL plans.
I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it's basically to complete all the games that are left in the season, still have two-legged playoffs and a final, and do all of that in a very, as short a time as possible, and that they've worked out to be 56 days. To me, the immediate problem when you see the situation, so Sam Winnall's got the virus. What happens for us, that if he's the only player that's ill, then okay, coronavirus has had an impact on our options, but not a real impact. But what if it's Stephen Fletcher, Barry Bannon, and Dominic Iorfa are ill one week? And what if we don't? So that's the first thing, is how do you maintain the integrity of a competition if a sort of international window, international breaks worth of players disappear from a squad? Is there a point where is there a point that's acceptable? Is there a point where you draw a line? So you sort of say, well, 3's fine, but 5, the game gets called off. And then what if those players don't? The other side of it then is the safety concerns of, well, you don't always know you've got the virus. Well, so a lot of people are symptom free, particularly at the start of it. So you can play a game without knowing you've got it, and then everybody that played that game with you has to isolate.
So yeah, I guess there's a lot of questions of that, and I kind of see that. That was kind of going on to just the little kind of the little sprinkle I just want to kind of put in that last kind of Sam Winnall thing is basically if we're led to believe what we kind of understand from the experts on COVID-19 is that asymptomatic transmission is very much a thing. And there are people can have mild to no symptoms and then just be spreading it around like Johnny Appleseed. But I thought that I don't know, but then it brings up so many questions that hell, people like me and you are pure peasants in terms of knowledge and information on this. But I thought they would basically look to test everybody. I mean, this was a bit similar. I have in my head that crazy. This was it about 2 or 3 weeks ago that everything's just felt such a blur in sense of time, right?
Yeah.
Like, actually, the other day I was thinking about things, and then I actually had to think back in, this sounds a bit self-serving, but I had to think back in this podcast to what episodes we have done. That kind of helps kind of mark the mini milestones of time. But the Premier League plans are basically saying that we're going to pick a place in the Midlands. It's going to be kind of behind closed doors. We're going to screen everybody going there to make sure that, everybody's fine. That includes the officials and the cameramen who will come, and the technical, however many people you need, as well as the football playing teams and the managers and the coaching staff. I don't know. I'm wondering, that's interesting because that's the Premier League, and I think, as we're often finding with the state of English football at a professional level, there's one rule for the elite and there's one rule for the rest of the chaff. But I would have thought that something like that could be possible.
Again, though, it's so how much testing? So you've got 93 clubs in the Football League, is that right?
Yeah.
So
the funny thing is, we're also saying this we're talking about this in a mentality where we're in a pond which is still kind of substantial in this world, because then we've got League One.
Yeah.
And we will. We can come on to this later. I saw some stats. I'll maybe do a week-long segue for what we talk about next week, maybe. The facts of the news about, was it the average wage in the Championship is about 14 grand a week, and then in the League One it's 2 grand a week?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty stark kind of division of wealth from the second and third tier.
Yeah,
so
and
I would say... I would say those plans to test everybody for the game would be viable in the Championship, I think.
I just think those numbers grow so quickly, because if you got, say, 93 teams, you wouldn't want to limit the squad people pick from. So you've got a match day squad of 18 plus some extras. Let's say it's 25 players viable per squad. Then you've got coaching staff, managers. I don't know how many of those get included, but let's limit it to 5. So you've got 93 times 30.
You would also want the freedom to bring kids in as well.
Well, so easily that's about 3,000 tests, just to do one test of everybody that's involved on the football side of things.
Yeah.
Add in, cameramen, officials, other sort of people that need to be there, maybe sort of chairmen and other sort of board members and things like that. You could easily be 5,000 tests. And how many times are you going to test them? So you're going to get tested every week? Are they going to get tested every couple of days?
I thought it would be basically like this mentality, like you would enter the bubble and then you test it on the way in. You're not going to get it on the, in there. Well, you shouldn't do.
I just don't know how. It's almost impossible to hermetically seal 5,000 people. Because then there's got the people are going to have to make food for them. People are going to have to deal with rubbish for them. Just logistically, it's a
logistical nightmare, isn't it? Really?
And that's before you feed in the kind of moral side of things. So if we're in a position where there's 5,000 of these tests happening every week to keep on top of it, so that football can happen, why on earth should those people get, why on earth should 5,000 of these tests that there doesn't seem to be enough of in the country be given to this little group of people? I know there's an awful lot of money rides on football, particularly at the top end. So you could, for the Premier League at the very least, you could sort of argue it makes a contribution to the exchequer and the funds, nurses and things like that. But it's a bit of a thorny line to walk. I think because the other sport, the first sport that was trying to get back, I don't know how much you sort of followed this. I'm a fan of mixed martial arts, and in particular within that the UFC, and they were trying to put on a fight next weekend. They picked out an Indian reservation. They'd put fighters in some kind of solitude, so they were in. The only guests on the Indian reservation were the fighters, their teams, and the people involved in the production and sort of looking after folks, the officials and medical people. But that's been called a halt to by Disney, who sort of run ESPN Sports. And at some level, it was kind of amazing that they were trying to do it. And if they pulled it off, they would have obviously had a bit of a free roll for audiences, because we're all starved of sport. We all love sport. It's one of the things that makes life, interesting and worth living. But I don't think sport at any cost is the way many people are wired, really.
Yeah, it's not a...
But what if we go? So just one last scenario. What if we go to? What if the very minimum? So we minimise the number altogether, so that it's just the Premier League that finishes. That's where all the money is. It's where all the attention is. What if Virgil van Dijk, Sadio Mane, and Jordan Henderson have all got coronavirus and can't join the camp? And what if Liverpool don't win another game between now and the end of the season? Lawsuits.
It would be hilarious.
It would be, on one level, absolutely hilarious.
Well, let me first mention, as a citizen of the world, it would be hilarious. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I mean, but everything's just becoming, I don't know, I think as we're wondering about the collapse of society and the, collapse of what we know of, I found myself getting really, really irritated the other week because I saw someone on LinkedIn trying to be very positive, and I wish I could find the post, because amidst all this, it was like, the economy was broken. We fixed it. I'm like, no, we didn't. No, like, I think that's kind of an argument from people who... So the thing I'm really struggling with a lot of this time is the fact that people don't understand that we are social primates. We need other people. So these services that we have are for people to connect with people. Like, we have things like bars and restaurants where it's a communal thing. And those things are just gone. So we are living to cope as much as possible without those things. We have things like, obviously we're doing... Here in North America, I'm not sure how much it's the same for you fine people in the UK, but there's as much, there's still a few businesses open for takeout through delivery services, through the apps and stuff, and you can order pickup from there, curbside drop off, that type of stuff. It's a replication of something. I mean, it's still giving you the end result of food, but part of going to places and part of being there is a communal experience. Music festivals, gatherings, museums, things where there is actually an unwritten kind of undertone that you are doing this with other people. You are doing these things to see other people. And I guess that's another kind of heartbreaking thing about, like, a lot of people have said, I'm not a fan of the mentality of playing football behind closed doors.
Well, that's before we haven't even touched on that, but that is a big issue for me, definitely. Which
I understand, and I'm conflicted with this because I wholeheartedly agree that fans are the lifeblood of this. Like, any mentality, like, I think as we're finding with society, with jobs that are coming up, the people who are making the money for the billionaires are the proletariat, are the workers, right?
Yeah.
So if people aren't doing that, if people aren't working in your local supermarket, then it's not going to fucking happen, basically.
Yeah.
So the point I think I was initially going to make, actually, sorry, there's been a whole of giant, it's my Luke's Harry Maguire turning circle of thought here, is the people who are really profiteering from this are the lawyers, because everything is becoming like an arms race. It's becoming a proverbial arms race of lawyering up, basically. Everything becomes a lawsuit. Everything becomes a litigation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think the other thing in terms of for the importance of fans, I mean, obviously the Premier League is a big driver in this. So they've got the money, and to an extent the EFL actually is propped up by the Premier League. It shouldn't really be how it happens, but the decision that was made in the 90s was to make a kind of boys club up at the top for the Premier League, and they are part of the football pyramid, but they are also separate from the football pyramid. So they make decisions that don't help the FA. They make lots of decisions that don't help the EFL. And
I mean, they are the Quebec of English football, aren't they? Really.
Often called the Quebec of English football. Quoi, says the Premier League. But so the Premier League, actually fans don't matter, because the Premier League, the clubs make their money from their whopping great TV deals.
Yeah.
So the fans provide a tiny part of the income, or at the very least a minority of the income. Everywhere else in the English football pyramid, the fans are vital, and the lower you down you go, the less money there is from other sources. So it's all about fans through the gate. So finishing a season behind closed doors is sort of a technical exercise that lets us put a cap on this season and go, okay, that's done. But it financially will be incredibly dicey for lots and lots of teams in the EFL. I mean, I know Wednesday are like 60% of their income, I think, is tickets and gate receipts.
Yeah.
But that's before you even get to the question of, well, I'm a person that's a season ticket holder. There's plenty of season ticket holders. What happens for me that I'm not able to watch the game? I mean, maybe I get the stream for free.
I would have thought that would be a logical kind of progression.
But it's an interesting sort of dilemma in many ways. I know that's the sort of least important thing, really, in some ways, is what, where I sit with my season ticket. But there's no walk-ups. There's no, it's all kind of, it just becomes such a mess.
It is. And I as we are talking, the same thing that X million people are doing is, or, even billions of people about different issues, is everything becomes, everything is a messy afterthought to what's going on with trying to prevent the spread of a virus, which, depressingly, I kind of got the news from the Alberta Premier this week that basically he reckons that basically 1 in 6 people in Alberta will be infected by the end of summer, basically, as it's all. Right. So even with that, I'm like, that's still huge. I'm like, I can't believe the depressing notion that, like, I can't believe we're doing all this, and that's still the end outcome.
Yeah. Oh, it's a crazy situation we're in. So, to lighten the mood, shall we move on to the third news story of the week, which is less directly related to Wednesday, but it's the fact that the EFL seem to have lost their sort of day in court in front of the independent panel for charges against Birmingham City, and have immediately appealed against it. So in the midst of all this, clubs going bust, the EFL, who set up independent panels, presumably because nobody trusted them to look after these issues themselves, when the independent panel tells them something they don't want to hear, they just appeal it.
Yeah, basically we just, we don't like you doing this. This is against the rules. We call this club appeals, goes to independent panel. The independent panel votes in the favour of the club, and the EFL say, yeah, but we don't like that outcome. So...
And we'll have the resources to keep challenging it until they get an answer they like.
Yeah.
By which stage the club is screwed because they've spent all the money going through these appeal processes, and they need to pay the fine to the EFL at the end of it.
Completely. Awful. And the funny thing is, I think, and hell, there's going to be, I think, as anyone can probably identify, and I think I'll put my hand up for this, Rich, and I imagine you'll join me in owning up to our hypocrisy of this, and only becoming sympathetic towards other clubs' plights when we're actually in that situation ourselves. But I really feel for Birmingham. I mean, they've been put through. Again, I think Birmingham has been the poster boy for the fact that they're always continually in the hole. I think it's like you said, it's like you never dig your way out of the hole, basically.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had very little interest or empathy for Birmingham's position prior to this, but it feels like they are in many ways the canary in the coal mine, and they are that little bit further down the tunnel than ourselves. So seeing what happens to them and how they're being treated feels very much like looking into the future for Wednesday. It just feels so unfair that they can appeal it. In court cases, if the state loses in court cases, they can't generally have another go at it, because it's not fair that the big body, the overly resourced body, if they lose the fight, that's it, because the little guy can't keep fighting the fight. The little guy can appeal because the whole machine is set up for the big guy. So the law has recognized that there's an imbalance and put things in place to kind of lend a little support to the imbalanced side in it. But in this, it's like the EFL holds all the cards, and even if they lose at cards, they go, oh well, we were playing snap anyway, and I've got 2 kings. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, and like you say, they just seem to be like ravenous. I don't know what do they want Birmingham City to do?
I don't know. And then that's to kind of go back on. So from what I kind of led to believe, thank you to Neil Hargreaves at Owlstalk for posting about this actually. So I was about the 7-point plan from the EFL. So what I feel like I understand from that, which again is a summary, I'm going by someone else's summary basically, but the EFL have basically said that they are not going to. Rick Parry, who's the EFL chairman, I think has previously said this. He says he's not a fan of the kind of cap in hand mentality of going to the Premier League for payments to help subsidise lower league football. But he said that basically they can get that £125 million, which maybe in the grand scheme of things is still, a little bit of a drop of ocean, but hell, it's a big chunk of change. They're not going to use that. And they're also not going to, they're still going to go ahead and look at financial fair play during this season, which is just absolutely madness considering what's happening. And I think the Daily Mail were reporting the fact that they estimated prior to this that about next season, 5 to 8 championship clubs would be looking to be foul of financial fair play unless they sold players in June, which is what they were essentially planning to do to help keep the FFP wolves from the door. So how's that now going to look with any kind of further kind of collapse with the money-making machine? Now that, sorry, I know I'm smattering a lot of news pieces in all of this and what we're saying, but like the Premier League are getting advance on the TV payments.
Yeah.
And there's been a whole argument about furloughing staff and about Spurs and what Daniel Levy's been doing. And someone made the fine point saying this isn't for the elite. This isn't a scheme for you to do such a thing. But all of this just makes you think how precarious and fickle finance in football are, considering the fact that we feel that all of this, the mentality, I think that from all of this, I should think, the Premier League should be flush with cash.
But almost every club loses money every year.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah. I just, you do think like, so the Birmingham situation is one thing in particular, but, looking at that, as you say, that decision from the EFL, just taking it on the face of it, you just think it's like they're unaware of how the clubs that are under their jurisdiction run.
Yes.
It's so strange. But that, the Birmingham situation, so the way that clubs are penalised is fines and point deductions. So a club is losing money, so what you do is you take more money from them. And a club is losing money, so what you do is you hurt their position in the league so that hopefully they go down. I mean, presumably that's the point of a points deduction. Or they certainly can't go up. So their access to resources that could save them and balance their books is reduced.
It's reduced, yeah.
So I'm just like, well, what? I don't think, obviously that it'd be bizarre to help people who are in trouble, have got themselves in trouble. But I just don't know what the end game is. So Birmingham get relegated. That's what the EFL want to happen because they need to serve time for their crimes against football, against bookkeepers. They have thumbed their noses at the accountants of this world and therefore deserve relegation and a big whopping fine. And so next year they make even less money. And it's not just as easy as clearing the books because you can't just get rid of players. You can sell players, but only sell players if people want to buy them. And as we know with the Jordan Rhodes situation, you can also be in a position where even selling a player is actually financially worse for you than keeping a player on the books.
Yes.
So I just don't know. It's a never-ending cycle. Once you get into this spiral of it, there's no way out unless you go bust. It's like they are encouraging clubs to go bust, reform and kind of start again.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're on the hook forever to the EFL. Oh, crazy stuff. We could talk about this forever, I imagine. But we have planned a feature for today. Would you like to talk us through it, Luke?
Sure. So as we're coming into, as we are now in Easter, what better to kind of segue this kind of Christian tradition that we have within our Western societies, even though we may not actually be Christian ourselves, with looking at the notion of rebirth and what are basically three things that Rich and we have our own free choices. We're not sharing them between us. We won't fight over the third one. Don't you worry. What are the three things, Wednesday things we want to see reborn? And for each one, we're also going to do a fun little comparison to what delicious chocolatey Easter egg would it be.
Lovely stuff. Do you want to lead us off, Luke?
What Luke wants an Easter rebirth of. Numero.
We're going to do one each. Pass it back and forth.
That's what we're going to do. Yeah, we're going to tag it. I'm going to do a little Easter rebirth rap battle.
Perfect.
Boy Richie Miller. Well, Luke wants an Easter rebirth of numero uno. Remember players in the middle of the park who didn't require a stand or stair lift when Megson took them to the top of the Cop? I think I do, but it's been a long time and would like Jesus to come out behind his cave and bless us with a player with a mobile and decent grip on the action. I don't require someone like Carlton Palmer, but imagine Joey Pelopessi with the muscles of Joey Pelopessi and the rest of him being replaced with a footballer competent for the second tier of English football. Imagine if they had some athleticism and not in their late 20s and had seen a ball enough to pass it better than all of our players, with maybe the exception of Bannon. Can I dream? I believe so. My Easter egg comparison with this mythical player is a Cadbury chocolate egg, deliciously hollow with a modest amount of mini eggs inside. Realistic and within our price range, and should not be a thing of the past.
Lovely stuff. My first element of rebirth is excitement. Someone to not only make us excited as fans, but for that excitement to be rewarded more often than it's not. I think we talked a little bit last week about Jermaine Johnson, and I think he was a man that actually more often than not delivered on the promise. You know, he got us excited, he got us out of our seats, and produced a good amount of goals to back it up. At the moment, we've got players in the squad who make us excited but fail to deliver on almost every occasion. I'm thinking of Fernando Forestieri, I'm thinking of Calvin Kadeem Harris, who, you know, for all his sort of trickery and hard work, almost every time he takes a shot, it goes miles wide. So my hope is for that excitement and for consistency in that excitement. And my comparison is an orange Smarties egg. You think it'd be too much of a good thing, but actually it's great.
Excellent. My second thing is movement. So one thing I'd like to bring back from Beyond the Grave is movement around the pitch. How about players moving around the pitch and improvising how they can move to support the shape of the team? What a radical concept of players moving into space, moving to cover each other, exploiting space with confidence. Imagine this. Players act like it is your home, but not your home during the quarantine. Maybe treat it like a palace where you can stride around majestically and purposefully with a few ounces of swagger put in your pomp. So my Easter egg comparison with this is my eldest brother once got a Kit Kat chunky egg, which came with a mug. Now, this mug was a bit of a special mug, let me tell you this, Rich. So it had a Kit Kat chunky spaced hole to slip in your bar, so it could warm through the chunky prior to dunking in your hot beverage of choice. So personally, I'm not a fan of dunking, but I have to applaud the sheer triumph of design. Something brilliantly and obviously designed, just like the concept of players moving around the pitch and not being static pedestrians.
Lovely stuff. My second one would be the rebirth of force, or in particular, enforcing. It's sort of a bit of an echo of your midfield option, but someone who loves a good hard tackle, puts himself about a bit, decent height, can actually win a header, but not silly fouls, not a liability, not someone that you sat kind of biting your nails worrying about them. They put in good hard tackles, but the emphasis is on good, driving the team forward, and as I say, not sort of being a constant worry, just being a reliable source of inspiration. My egg comparison is a Yorkie egg. It's not for girls. It's chunky. It's satisfying. But at the heart, it's plain.
Excellent stuff.
But who's your third and final revelation, I guess?
So I want a second coming of Jermaine Johnson. Maybe instead of the next outlay of transfer fees, we can look into making JJ come back and upgrade into a bionic man. The 350k man, perhaps? The 350k being used exclusive one-off payments and installments in whatever we can fix them up with. I brought up JJ as I think we missed some of his electric pace. And a ball carrier as good as he is as well. Yeah. I think that's something. Yeah. So the delight of his mazy dribbling at top speed is something I've missed greatly. Like a PES 6 player with little quality other than doing 0 to 60 in frighteningly quick times. While I like our wing options, I severely miss seeing a player burn a bunch of other players for pace. The delight of his 100-meter sprints on the wings at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And the Easter egg comparison. So something flash, exciting, yet comfortable. So I'm thinking of like a classic and dated-looking Mars Easter egg with a couple of bars and a mug and a gold-wrapped egg. Nice. Classic, exciting, yet homely stuff that takes you back.
Superb. My final one is leadership. A leader at the back, a rallying point. Stand up and be counted. Do or die. I just don't think there's anybody that talks enough. I want to hear yelling. I want to see people not bent double, sort of sort of giving blame out to people, but actually instructions and telling people where to be, what to do, and if they're not applying themselves, giving them what for. Something that we just completely lack. The team is far too quiet. Good teams have leaders all over the pitch. We've got no leaders anywhere on the pitch. And in particular, our captain in Tom Lees is awful at this. You never, ever see him talking to anyone. He just cowers and then makes mistakes. So the comparison to an Easter egg, I've said, conversely to the no-frills nature of their play, in Easter egg terms, they are the bougie, expensive centerpiece that the rest of the Easter detritus is arranged around.
Excellent. Oh, what was that detritus? What did you say? The other Easter egg detritus.
Yeah, the Easter detritus is arranged around.
Excellent.
So, inspired by Easter, those are our sort of hopes. We both picked 3 suggestions based on the 3 days that Jesus spent in the tomb. I hope that was obvious from the outset. But whether you're a religious person or not a religious person, hopefully you've managed to get some chocolate into your house, whether it's been delivered by somebody or you've gone out and got it yourself. What's your sort of Easter egg situation, Luke?
But, when we're just in the build-up to this, I was just like, I should have acted ahead of time and ordered some imported British chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Because the grim situation in Canada is... So basically, I'll just give where it lies in the kind of North American chocolate landscape. Basically, Canadians are very proud that it's not basically the entirety of it's not just like the States, in which they have a lot of tasteless, waxy stuff. See Hershey's. Even though I quite like the Hershey's white chocolate, which has never been...
Oh, okay.
The cookies and cream. I quite like the cookies and cream. Okay. Hershey's bar is quite good. There have been... I think I like the white Hershey's Kisses.
Nice. But I don't think I've tried either of those, but Hershey's milk chocolate definitely tastes a bit of sick.
It is a bit sick-like, isn't it? Especially compared to some of the UK stuff. They're very proud in Canada to have Cadbury's. However, Cadbury's isn't as good as it is in the UK or Ireland or Australia, from what I understand. I've had some stuff from Australia and it was quite good.
Okay.
It's this weird mentality of like, oh, it's better than what you guys... Because I guess there's this whole kind of back and forth with the whole American warring with the Americans and a bit of joyful fuck you at the border type
yes,
even though we're incredibly dependent on the Americans and so much of the population is near the border because it's a cold place, ladies and gentlemen. And so we're kind of people are kind of proud of that, though some of the Cadbury's isn't particularly good. It's okay. We have some different kind of brands of stuff. They do one called Mr. Big, which is like it's like a Lion Bar, but it's not actually. The chocolate's kind of like a dark toffee.
Okay.
It's not actually kind of like, I guess like a lot of chocolate isn't really classed as chocolate because it's not proper chocolate.
Okay.
It's like you kind of call it a candy or a sweet or something.
Yes, candy, chocolate flavored candy sort of situation.
And if it had actual chocolate, it could be quite good, or milk chocolate.
Yeah.
Another thing I actually want to give a shout out to is a coffee crisp.
Oh, yeah.
You're a gentleman has had a coffee crisp before.
Yes.
And as I've compared it to, I had one. I'm not a big coffee guy. I don't like coffee flavor, but coffee crisp is very good, I will say. And it's a bit like a coffee Tunnocks caramel wafer.
Yes.
Which now really makes me want to have a Tunnocks. But basically, to I did also one time bring a bunch of chocolate over some of my old work colleagues in a previous job, and one lady exclaimed to me that she said the chocolate tasted so alive.
Wow.
So that probably kind of gives you a dimension of how it compares to UK stuff. So I miss...
Yeah.
I miss the junk food in the UK. The junk food is incredible. Like, it's some real top quality shit.
When I've spent a long time in North America, do you know so I don't think I miss sort of. I'm quite a sweetie fan. Like, I like Haribo and I like sort of gummy type sweets. There's nothing that's kind of like a mix of things, like a bag of Haribo. So that's a bit of a miss. And I also don't. I think they do like sugar coated, but they don't tend to do sour as much as us in their sweet.
They don't know. The sour's not quite there.
Yeah, and so I miss that factor as well. Although I do like, kind of a peach ring or an apple ring. That's a fairly good gummy sweet that's available in America. I've got an Easter egg from my lovely mother. She sent one down, and I got sent some money from my grandparents to buy myself another Easter egg. But I'm probably not going to spend it on an Easter egg, Luke.
Oh,
that might go on something else. I managed to get an order delivered from a supermarket this week, and it was sort of, I had almost a week to keep adding things to it, and I just kept thinking of vital things that had to be brought to the house. It just got ridiculous. I think I went on about five different times to just add and tweak things. But my house is absolutely groaning with things that are not particularly good for me, sweets and crisps and biscuits. So it's I'm in a good spot snack wise, although Easter egg wise I'm a little bit bereft. Well, yeah, wherever you are and whatever your chocolate egg situation is, we hope you enjoy, indulge a little bit, and we'll talk to you again next week. Cheerio.
See you guys. See you.
Bye. A bit of prior warning for folks. The idea for next week, Luke, is that we'll watch Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix.
Yes, indeed, yes. We'll look over it and give our full review of the cast and characters and what happens from another landmark Sunderland season from 2018 to 2019.
Yeah, so if you want to sort of join us in that, feel free to watch season 2 ahead of time, and we'll get into it in detail next week.